Emily was mentioning about her campaign. This is also going to be a very difficult race for us, as many of you know. Republicans specifically gerrymandered Sidney Batch's seat a couple more points to the right just for this cycle. So that tells you what they think of her. So it's going to take a huge team effort to pull ahead in this district and make sure people still are aware of Sidney's profile and her background and the work that she's done in her short time in the legislature. So I personally am moving out to North Carolina in 2 weeks' time. So I'm hoping to get to know a lot of y'all more this cycle. And thank you so much again for everything you're doing. It's a huge help and it really matters. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Sean. We are very glad to have you here. And Vicky Zuflita, please tell me if I'm not pronouncing that right, is the campaign manager for Terence Everett, and we're very glad to meet you too.
Vicky, you should be unmuted and you should have your video.
We can't hear you, but we see you.
Well, we look forward to talking to you soon.
Exactly. And Elaine Berry is the campaign manager for Ricky Hurtado in Alamance County. And we've asked Elaine to talk for a minute to spell out what exactly our time spent phone banking is accomplishing right now for all of these campaigns.
Yeah, I'll just echo some of the things that have already been said. We had the best virtual phone bank that we've been able to have all year. Last week, we contacted almost 1,500 people in one night, and that's phenomenal. But it's that kind of effort that we're going to have all of these campaigns right now, because we're so handicapped by the fact that we can't knock doors. And we all know your claim to fame is not just your name, it's actually knocking doors. And so I just want to say thank you for all of us that you have been able to convert from a canvassing group to a virtual phone banking group, because we're all having to do that. Besides the fact that you're enabling us to contact voters that we have not been able to, would not have otherwise been able to contact, you're able, when you help us do that, you're able to help us do things like clean up the list. For example, we're making that first pass through right now. So some of the phone numbers are not good numbers. So for example, I know for us, we have a notes part at the bottom. So when you get a wrong number, you can say wrong number and then write down the number. We can take that out, so it won't be a number that we try again. Another thing, and this is a big weakness of Vote Builder right now, at least in Alamance County, is that we don't have a lot of great emails. And a lot of the tools that are available to the campaigns to contact people, NGP, et cetera, rely on email addresses. So one of the other things that you're helping us do when you make these calls, not only are you doing contacts for the individual candidates, but you're helping us get emails that we can use to contact people further down the line. Most of us are going to be in, or all four of the people you pick, not only are they great candidates, but the calls you make are just so important. A lot of you have known me for a while because I ran Erica McAdoo's campaign in 2018. And in 2018, you watched as those results came in, and you know Erica lost by 298 votes. She was the last candidate. She got the most votes in the closest race of anybody that didn't make it into the legislature. So we don't want that to happen again in 2020. And if you think about the fact that if you call 50 people at one night and we have 6 of you calling 50 people in one night, that's 300 possible votes. So when you think in terms like that, it's not just every vote that counts, it's every call that counts. So I just want to say thank you from Ricky Hurtado's campaign, and I kind of speak for the rest of the crew that every one of your calls makes a difference. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Elaine, for validating that work. We really appreciate it, and we will keep working hard. Emily, Elaine, Sean, Vicki, thank you so much for what you are doing, and we are very appreciative of your leadership so that we can jump in and be put to work. We list on our website and in our Monday email lots of opportunities for everyone to jump in to support these 4 campaigns, to flip and to defend. And as always, with Neighbors on Call, you have support. Some come from the phone bank organizer, like these great campaign managers, where they train you on how to do the virtual phone bank, and they give you the script. And then Knock during the phone bank has a Google Hangout, which is just a chat thread on your computer or tablet so that we can stay in touch and you can ask questions and we cheer each other on. And we have a dedicated Knock phone bank person in every phone bank, so in case you have questions, you have someone to contact. And then the campaigns always reconvene at the end by Zoom to talk about how it went, so that's a nice time to reconnect. So we're asking everyone to please give it a try. This is the best tool we have right now. Even if you're anxious about it, to please give it a try. And if you're one of our regulars, we ask you to please sign up for at least 2 phone banks in May. And you can do that at neighborsoncall.org. And you will get a follow-up email that will have that link in it. So thank you very, very much. If you haven't turned off your audio or video, we ask everyone to do that for the bandwidth. And Senator Foushee, we're so glad to have you here. We are honored that you are here to join us. Senator Foushee was first elected to represent House District 50 in 2012. And she was then elected to the state Senate in 2014, where she represents Orange and Chatham counties. She retired from the Chapel Hill Police Department after 21 years of service as an administrator and a supervisor, and she also served on local and state school boards and the Orange County Board of Commissioners. Now, she is leading the fight to flip the North Carolina Senate as the chair of the North Carolina Senate Democratic Caucus. Senator Foushee, thank you so much for being here, and we now give you the floor.
Thank you, Becca, and thanks to all of you for having me, and thank you for your work. I think it's clear to everyone that we have work to do. You all have been doing this work for quite some time. You've been successful at it, and your success has been our success. And when I say our success, I mean the success of the state as we work to preserve democracy. All of you are aware of what's happening in our state right now, not just as it relates to the virus, but what the General Assembly has done in terms of not representing every North Carolinian, not ensuring the best quality of life for all North Carolinians, but indeed working in the self-interest of those who only care for themselves. And what this virus has done is it has put a bright light on what is happening now and what has happened. I'll give you a little bit in terms of updates as it relates to COVID-19. As of yesterday, there were 16,351 people who have tested positive for the virus. Sadly, 625 people have died from the virus as of yesterday. And on yesterday, we got a report of 470 new cases, which is an increase of 301 cases of the virus over a 24-hour period. There is only one county in the state of North Carolina that does not have reported cases of the virus, and that is Avery County, which is in the westernmost part of our state. You also know that as of Friday at 5 o'clock, we moved into phase 1 of easing some of the restrictions for our businesses. We know that it's important that we have as much testing as possible so that we can do the contact tracing, so that we can do what we can to provide treatment and work towards flattening the curve and eliminating the virus to the extent possible. We are moving into a phase where there are more tests being done daily. I think DHHS's goal is to have at least 8,000 cases of testing done every day. We are approaching that with right around 7,000 cases done per day. It is no secret to any of you that the virus has reshaped every aspect of our lives, from how we educate our children, how we shop in grocery stores, how we even visit with our families and friends. But another thing that has happened, as I said earlier, when we talk about what has happened in the state of North Carolina as it relates to governance, we have seen that this virus has shown that if we don't move to expand Medicaid so that we can provide access to affordable health care to at least 500,000 more North Carolinians, such that people are not afraid to visit a doctor to see if they need testing. People are or have access to testing in situations where they cannot pay. We have to ensure that we have access to broadband. If indeed our children are going to have to do remote learning, you cannot do remote learning if you don't have access to high-speed internet. And it is not a solution that we spend money to put hotspots on buses to drive to parking lots so that students have access. Understanding that all students don't even have access to the parking lots where the hotspots have been brought. I think that when we know that every county in the state of North Carolina has areas where there is either a situation where people are unserved or underserved, that it is the state's responsibility to no longer deem access to internet a luxury or just some service that you may or may not want, but indeed access to the internet is a utility. And as we move forward, we need it for small businesses, we need it for home businesses, but first and foremost, we need it to ensure that all of our children are getting a sound and basic education. I mentioned earlier when we talked about testing, the fact that we still know that we need to expand Medicaid. That I'm not going to belabor that point because all of us know that this is something that we have fought for. I've been fighting for it since 2013 when the General Assembly made the decision that it would not expand Medicaid. So we need to continue that effort. I was saddened that even though we were able to bring forward a consensus bill to pass for these emergent issues, there was no consideration for expanding Medicaid. And finally, I'll just highlight the fact that we have learned as a state, as a county, as local community, that we have frontline heroes that have worked hard to keep us safe. They have worked hard to ensure that there's someone in the grocery stores and the drugstores, people who are working to make sure that our surfaces are clean, that whatever we do, we are safer from contracting the virus than we would have been had we not known how quickly and how easily this virus is transmitted. These are now what we call essential workers. Many of these people are the same people who have been fighting and who have been sharing their stories such that we all know that $7.25 is a paltry sum to pay to anybody who's trying to take care of themselves or raise their children. These are the same people who have been asking for the minimum wage to be raised to $15 per hour. These are the same people who are now asking for hazard pay. These are the same people who are working in congregate facilities who are making $7.25 an hour, who are afraid not to come to work because they know that if they don't come to work, they're not going to get paid. If they don't get paid, they can't feed their families. They are not being tested. They are bringing the virus into these facilities where folk who are already there cannot leave. What we see now is an opportunity to govern. And I say all of this to say that we have been given an opportunity as representatives of the people of North Carolina to act in their best interests. I will say to you that I was happy to be able to move into an environment, although many of my colleagues did not wear masks, but we were in an environment where we were working in a manner that we put partisan philosophies aside to make sure that we were using those CARES Act dollars to provide services to the people whom we serve. You know that the House representatives operated in a different manner, that the Speaker of the House enacted or established rather committees to work directly on how those funds would be distributed. Senator Berger did not choose to operate in that fashion. Instead, he decided that he would allow his oversight committees to operate in some fashion. We still aren't sure how they did because there were no meetings called. But what he did say to Senator Blue was that he would allow us to present ideas of how the money should be spent. We would funnel them up to the top and they would be considered in a package that would be presented for deliberation and ultimately a vote. The Senate Democratic Caucus chose to divide into work groups to make sure that we were hitting those areas that we thought needed immediate attention. And so we focused on healthcare. We focused on getting funding to local governments, understanding that they were in the midst of budget season and not being able to project sales tax revenues, not being able to project other funding that would be coming into the state. We focused on unemployment insurance benefits. We focused on elections. And so I'm happy to say that as those reports were funneled up to leadership, many of them were included into the final package that was passed on that Saturday morning. But what was not in that package was consideration for Medicaid expansion. What was not included in that package was an increase in the maximum benefit for unemployment, which had been reduced to $350 per week. We tried to get that at least increased to $400 per week. And we wanted to extend the duration of the benefit period. That also was not included. So you know that we were able to appropriate I think it was about $1.6 billion of the $4.4 billion that were funds that were allocated to our state. And when we return next week, I would imagine that we will work on a new package, given what we know in terms of what is still needed as it relates to more testing, as it relates to helping small businesses, and as it relates to what we will do for education for the remainder of this year. I'm going to stop there and allow for questions because I could talk for quite some time about what has happened and what has not happened and what needs to happen.
Senator Foushee, thank you so much for that. And I think, well, I'll say for myself, I'm so proud to have you as my senator. And I think I'm speaking for everybody, whether they live in your district or not, that we're so appreciative for how hard you're fighting and what an uphill battle we understand that must be in the Senate. And we just are so grateful to you. To all the neighbors on call, Patience and Bonnie are going to be fielding the questions from the chat. So start putting your questions in there if you haven't already, and Patience will be calling them out. And before she does that, I just want to ask, well, first you said the legislators have an opportunity now because of the money that is the federal money to be spent, and that there has been some coming together. Do you mind talking for a minute just about what our opportunity is in the big picture in November? A lot of us have been reading Jean Nichols' book that just came out about what's been going on in the past almost decade. And it's, you know, it's about all the things you're talking about, but these are all cumulative things in such a big picture and what's at stake in November. So I
just finished last week reading Indecent Assembly, and I find it very interesting that I came to the General Assembly in 2013, and as you read through the book, he does talk about how things started after the 2010 election, beginning with, in 2011, redistricting and that entire process. But what I find very interesting in that book, and as it relates to my tenure in the General Assembly, is that it was in 2013 that the General Assembly decided not to expand Medicaid. It was in 2013 that the General Assembly not only reduced the maximum payment for unemployment from $550 per week to $350 per week, eliminated or reduced the benefit period from 26 weeks to 12 weeks. It was in 2013 that the first voter ID legislation was passed. I recall that in 2013, when we made the reduction in unemployment insurance, at that time we affected 170,000 North Carolinians. It was in 2013 that the beginning of the Racial Justice Act was starting. It was repealed in that year. So that a lot of those things that happened back then was a foretelling of what was going to happen now and what is happening in the future. When we return next week, my fear is that because we don't have a budget to tweak, because we don't know what revenues are going to be coming in, given that income tax collections have been delayed to July 15th, which puts us in the next fiscal year, that you will see leadership being not just conservative, but being really, really stingy as how funds are going to be appropriated. I do believe that because this is an election year, and because we have seen now what we've always known, they cannot deny that teachers are doing more than their share. They're doing yeoman's work in trying to keep students engaged, particularly from this remote learning environment. There has to be some consideration for increased compensation for teachers. I think what will happen as it relates to Senate leadership is that we will probably come in, they have probably decided what they're going to put forward, and they're going to try to use the same method that we used in terms of getting a consensus bill, where they know that what they put in it will have to say yes, because we know that people are hurting. We know that people are anxious. We know that people are afraid. And if there's a way that we can get funds in their pockets, if there is a way that we can help them reopen their businesses safely, if there is a way that we can ensure that students are going to get breakfasts and lunches between now and the end of the school year, then yes, we're going to agree to appropriate that funding. But I don't think that you will see on the Senate side any real legislation that will do the things that I just spoke of. I think what I have already seen, and I don't know if you all have had the chance to look at some of the bills that have been filed, but there has already been a bill filed to eliminate the restrictions on the bill to allow funding for private schools. Senator Heiss has already filed, I think it is, here it is, yes, Senate Bill 711, which opens eligibility to all North Carolina students, eliminating the premise that the target for those funds for the opportunity scholarships were for low-income students. He has already filed a bill that we will consider, and I'm sure that there is support to pass this bill to open up the funding for the opportunity scholarships to go to anybody who applies until the money runs out. I think what we'll see in the short session, given that North Carolinians are aware of what is going on, North Carolinians are looking for a change in leadership, there will be a push to push through this type of legislation to get those things done that we have fought against and that the governor has had the ability to veto. That's a long answer to your short question, Becca. I'm sorry, I'm about to get upset about some things that I've seen. Because again, you know, you've seen these reopen North Carolina people come out and protest because they feel that it's okay for them to move about freely as they want. They feel that if they don't mind risking their lives, that it's okay that they can risk the lives of others, because some of them say that some people are gonna die anyway. And so there's already been a bill to reopen North Carolina such that people who disobey the governor's executive orders won't be penalized in any way. I think we'll see a lot of that next week.
There are a lot of questions about what you're saying coming up in the chat, so I'm going to pass it over to Patience to pick up that thread.
Okay. Senator Foushee, do you feel any optimism that funds for election preparation will be forthcoming?
I do not feel that in these next couple of weeks that will happen. I do not. That is not on Senator Berger's radar. I'm not going to say that the House may not take up bills that will at least look at how we prepare for the November elections, given that we know that COVID will be with us. I don't know that, I know that there's no urgency on the part of leadership to make those deliberations in the near future.
There's a question about Senator Berger's leadership style. Is that something that's constitutionally defined, or is it just his style? What requirements does he have to be inclusive and bipartisan?
He does not. The Constitution does not, it does not compel him to do that. That's what redistricting is all about. Having not only leadership, but having significant numbers to push through any agenda that you can get votes for. And so much of what has been done in the Senate has been done in that, that caucus room. That, you know, when we get the package, it's already done, you know, and nothing is brought out from those caucus meetings that he does not already have support for. We saw that with the HB2 situation. If you all recall, when HB 142 came forward, he did not think that it was going to pass because he thought he had sufficient opposition for that. But he learned from that. Nothing comes out of that caucus room that he does not already have the votes for. Which is why you never saw an attempt to override the governor's veto of the budget in our chamber.
Here's a tough question. The most vulnerable tend to be unlikely voters. How do we change that?
I think that the only way we can do that is to continue what you all are doing. We have to ensure that people are reached in such a manner that they understand that it is not just a good thing to do. It's not just the right thing to do. It's a must do. If we don't take back at least one of these chambers, such that in 2021, after the census has been completed and we are redistricting again, and we have the same leadership that is drawing congressional and legislative districts, then we're in for another 10 years of the same type of governance. We are in the same situation where we will spend all of this time in court with an illegally established General Assembly, an indecent assembly.
Are there provisions in the CARES Act for accountability for employers to make the workplace safe for workers going back to work? Robin asked this question. She's concerned about North Carolinians who are immunocompromised or undergoing chemotherapy or otherwise at high risk and are being asked to go back to work.
I am not sure that it does. Hold on a second. I did some research for frequently asked questions for unemployment insurance benefits as it relates to the CARES Act. And one of the questions that I researched is, my employer has called me back to work. What happens if I choose not to return? So generally, an employee is disqualified from receiving further benefits if the employee chooses not to return to work after receiving notice to do so from their employer. If your employer has called you back and you did not return to work, you should report that you have refused an offer to work when filing your weekly certification. So that would suggest to me that there is not really an option. You know, if you decide willingly that you're not going to return, then you lose your eligibility for benefits.
Okay. Alan wants to know, where do you see our best prospects for compromise on our top priorities?
Well, I'll say this. Children who attend North Carolina public schools are not thinking in a partisan manner. They are not little Democrats and not little Republicans. And so it would seem to me that any parent of any child who is attending a public school and they live in an area where they don't have access to high-speed internet, that it is their responsibility to ensure that those who represent them are acting in their best interests. I filed a bill along with 2 other senators to allow local governments to partner with private enterprise, the telecoms, to use their vertical assets and any other infrastructure to help provide access to these underserved and unserved areas. I think that that is something that we ought to be able to compromise on. I think that, you know, in the House, we had the great act passed, but it was limited in funds. And by the time we got into working through COVID-19, most of the funding that was left, I think there were about $15 million left in that fund. Once the application process was open, that money was gone in a few days. My bill is going to allow, if it is passed, is going to allow us to be able to use local government infrastructure, vertical assets to provide access to the internet. That's something on which we should be able to compromise. I think that in terms of us making sure that there is funding for testing in communities where we've had hospitals to close, where drugstores and other stores and even churches are allowing their facilities to be used to provide testing, I think that we ought to be able to compromise there. I think that as it relates to providing funding for teachers and for other non-certified personnel in schools, I think that we'll be able to compromise in terms of increasing compensation for them. But in the short session, I don't know that there are many other areas that you're going to see the leadership being willing to reach across the aisle to help us get those things that we need passed during the short session. My fear is that there will be targeted pieces of legislation that will be brought up for consideration, and we'll leave Raleigh. And we'll come back sometime in July when we know what the income tax revenues look like. We'll have some idea of what sales tax revenue looks like, and we will start determining how we will make appropriations after that time. But that's only a short time between, you're talking July to maybe mid-September, when people are really starting to campaign, with knowing that early voting is going to start at least by mid-October. And if we are fortunate, earlier than that, there are not going to be a lot of people in Raleigh doing the people's business because they'll be campaigning.
Okay, Dina expressed some concern about the open demonstrations going on in Raleigh, and given that, you know, North Carolina gun laws prohibit the carrying of guns during demonstrations, is this going to be enforced moving forward, or how do you feel about that?
I think that Raleigh PD is going to handle this according to law. I think that if it continues, you'll see, at least I hope we'll see, that the law that's on the books that prohibits going armed to the terror of the public will be enforced. It's interesting to me that on Moral Mondays, they locked up almost 1,000 people who were unarmed, who were trying to access the people's house. And after they were exonerated in court, we changed how people can come into the building, where they can go and how many of them can. But we see these folk who are, some of them are masked, not because they're afraid of the virus, I think, but because they can't be identified, but they're carrying firearms. I think that we have to work hard to make sure that those who are supposed to enforce the law are enforcing the law.
Okay. Marilyn wants to know, will the leadership forgo receiving federal COVID stimulus funds rather than meeting matching requirements?
That's a good question. When we talked earlier, before we came back into session to do the relief package, there was some talk about that, but I can tell you on the Senate side, there is not a lot of appetite for putting forward the match.
Okay. The State Board of Elections has made some really good recommendations regarding elections. Is there any likelihood of those moving forward?
I think that you will see bills filed. I think that the House will probably forward those bills to a committee. I think you will see some deliberation in the House. I hope that we will take that bill up in the Senate. I think that there will be so much pressure to do so that I think I am optimistic that that will occur. To what extent, I don't know, but I think that we will take up an election law bill before we leave the short session.
Okay. Shri wants to know, are employers liable for loss of life of employees if they're forced to return to work? He said he knows Mitch McConnell is trying to shut that down.
I don't know the answer to that one. I tend to think the answer is no. I think that there is going to be a bill filed that will deal with rebuttable presumption, but I'm not sure. I know there's been some talk about that, but at this moment, I think the answer to that question is no.
North Carolina can get $10 million federal dollars if it will commit $2 million for the 2020 election. What's the chance of that?
Again, back to the other question, I can't say that the Senate will take up that bill or appropriate that $2 million. I'm hoping that there will be enough pressure such that if it does pass the House, that we will hear it. I do believe that if it is heard, that it will pass.
Okay. Is there any talk about safety in meat and chicken packing plants?
I haven't heard any, and I have looked at bills that were filed that, can you hold on a second? Let me make sure. I haven't seen anything yet, and I spent some time looking at some of the filings today. I have not seen any bills related to that yet.
Okay. I saw today that you filed a bill to reinstate the earned income tax credit.
I did.
Do you think, and that's something that Gene Nickel addressed in his book, the fact that North Carolina was the only state to
We are the only state
get rid
in
of that.
the nation that eliminated that.
Do you
And
think
this is
that
probably- it's
that
the fourth time that I filed the bill.
Oh, okay. Do you think it has any chance to move forward at this point?
I do not.
Okay.
But they can't say that we are not trying.
Okay.
This one is egregious to me, for North Carolina to be the only state in this union that has eliminated that credit makes no sense. And again, I think it was a 2013, one of those 2013 moves.
Okay. And with regard to Senate Bill, I think it's 711 that you brought up, getting rid of the income eligibility requirement for the private school vouchers. That was one of our calls to action, so I just wanted to point everybody out to look to our last email, to contact your legislators to let them know that you don't support that attack on public schools. The question, aren't we the state with the lowest unemployment compensation? Is there any chance that that's going to change as a result of what's going on right now?
We are, and the answer to that is no. Because we filed a bill that would increase that benefit amount to $400. But I mean, it was in our suggestions for the consensus package. And we did have some Democratic senators to file a bill to do just that again today. But again, I'm not optimistic that it will be heard in committee.
Okay. And we continue to have a lot of questions about the elections. People are
and let me throw this out there. Now, the Senate bill did have that in there, and it was voted 48-0 in the Senate. It was the House that took that out.
Okay. Well, okay. If social distancing is still recommended in September, do you think early voting could be extended longer than what we have had in the past, so that people will have more opportunity to socially distance from each other while voting?
I'm optimistic that early voting will be extended.
Okay. Okay. Bonnie, are there any questions that I overlooked here?
Aiden had a question. Are insulin price caps being considered in the coronavirus relief package bill?
Ask that again, I'm sorry. I didn't hear.
Are insulin price caps being considered in the coronavirus relief bill?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay. Steve points out that Democrats lost a House seat in a California special election this week, a seat we flipped by 8 points in 2018. Any lessons for us here in North Carolina?
I don't think so. You know, I think, and I can only speak for the Senate because that's where my work has been. But in terms of, you know, when I came to the Senate, there were 17 Dems. And in 2014, we lost one. In 2016, we lost one. In 2018, we picked up 6. I think that the 21 seats that we now hold, with the exception of 3, well, I shouldn't say the exception of 3. There are 3 seats that are more vulnerable than the other 18. And that is the seats that are held by Senator Deviere, Senator Peterson, and who's the third one? Come to me in a moment. I don't think that we will lose those seats. I do believe that we will pick up no less than 3. And I do believe that it is a good possibility that we will pick up 5 or 6. I think that in the House, that they have the same opportunities. If we really work hard and in terms of voter turnout, I don't see that we will lose any seats. I do believe with everything that I know that we will pick up seats. I'll stop short of saying that we will pick up enough to take the majority in both chambers, but I am optimistic that we will do so.
And you say if we work hard on voter turnout, what can we do given the limitations right now?
Well, given the limitations, we have to use as many people as we can get, as you all are doing, to make those phone calls. And if we are still social distancing in late September through November, then it would be my hope that the General Assembly will ensure that we have enough of polling places, that we have enough days, that those days have extended hours such that people can get to the polls to do what they need to do. I don't think that it should be a problem for us to tell everybody to request an absentee ballot. People are saying, well, Valerie, just like the unemployment situation, are we equipped to handle more than what's normal as it relates to absentee ballots? Well, I say we got to deploy every method that's available to us to make sure that everybody who is registered to vote does vote. And then we need to make sure that everybody who's eligible to be registered is indeed registered. That's the only way we're going to be able to do it. And I would also remind people that the same roadblocks that exist for us exist for them. We just have to be smarter. We have to make sure that all of the efforts to disenfranchise voters, that we put up the blocks and say that you don't win here. This is democracy, and people have the right to do what is in their best interest. And right now, what's in their best interest is to vote these folk out of office.
Okay, and I'm going to hand this back to Becca, but lots of folks are thanking you and telling you how much they appreciate your efforts and your tenacity, and thank you.
Many thanks.
Thank you. Many thanks. And I just want to read Isabel's comment just as an example of what's popping up in the chat. She said, "You're an inspiration. Your tenacity is more than admirable. I wish you health, wellness, and a long, long, long tenure." We are grateful to you. And I second that. Thank you.
Yes, me too.
So thank you so much for being here with us. We really appreciate everything you're doing, and we will work our hardest to put the Democrats in charge next year.
You inspire us.
Thank you. Thank you.
And thank you for what you're doing.
Flip the seats. So Neighbors on Call, thank you for being here, and we want to see you again at a phone bank, and we will send you that link, and it is neighborsoncall.org where you can find it. And we will also see you hopefully Wednesday, May 27th at 7:30 when Jean Nickel will be here to talk about indecent assembly.
Well, 7 o'clock for social time before. I hope you can hear me now. So yeah, please join us then. Love seeing y'all.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.